bringing you in-depth discussion from one of the rad groups of online writers covering the Edmonton Oilers. Are you ready for Oilers Overtime? Join us as we talk news, rumors, trades, player grades, game results, and more. All featured on one of the most glorified teams in the NHL. From the great one to the next one. From the boys on the bus to the decade of darkness. This is Oilers Overtime.
Hey there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of THW Oilers Overtime. My name is Jim Parsons here with the HockeyWriters.com. As always, Colton Pankiw with us. Colton, how are you?
Good, Jim. Good to be back. Excited to get going.
Yeah, we said last week that we were going to see if we can get somebody else on here, but we didn't. I don't know why we didn't do that, but it's the two of us again this week, but we're going to be talking a little bit about the Oilers and what's been happening so far with their season, slow starts, other things like that. So let's get right into it. 3 games into the season. As people watch this, there'll be a game against Carolina tonight for people who are watching this video at that time. What are you making of the start so far? They're 1-2 on the season. They made a comeback against Vancouver, kind of got pretty handily outplayed by Calgary. And then I think they really outplayed Buffalo, but ended up not being able to beat a really hot goaltender. So what have you made of these 3 starts so far?
I think like you see some frustration already like amongst fans, and I understand it. There's been some kind of inconsistent play, and I know we're going to get to the slow starts soon here, but I think overall it's still very early. This team just has too much firepower, I think, to stay down like this for much longer. It's a bit of a tough stretch coming up here, like you said, with Carolina next, but I think overall there's not too much to worry about at this point. I think whether it's next game or in the next couple, they're going to turn things around here soon.
Yeah, I guess for me, the biggest issue is that Calgary, maybe not so much, but Vancouver, Buffalo, 2 teams that if you looked at the schedule, now keep in mind, the Oilers think they're going to be pretty good. We all think they're going to be a pretty good team. There shouldn't be any team that comes into Edmonton that they don't feel like they can beat. But Vancouver and Buffalo were probably 2 teams they thought they were going to beat. Calgary is going to give them a run for their money every time they play them. They just, to me, the urgency hasn't been there yet. Like they haven't started, not just hot starts, but like the team itself doesn't seem to be mentally ready to go. Like as the face-off starts for the first opening, puck drop, it's like they take a minute to get into the game. And then even, I think it was Leon Draisaitl said, like, once we get into it, we're good to go. That is the only real concern for me. I'm not pressing the panic button. I'm not really feeling like, oh my gosh, the season's already a mess. Not at all. But if their mentality is, oh, we just need to get into the game, I don't know if that's the best thing, right? You want to be ready to go. I don't know what they got to do to be ready for the opening puck drop. They were better against Buffalo. They outshot them in the first period, and I thought they had much better scoring chances. But does it say anything to you that these players are like, yeah, we just need to get ourselves into the game before we can really get going and get up to speed? Like, shouldn't they be ready to go when the puck drops?
Well, it feels like we've been kind of saying this since we started this show, and honestly, it's been a thing even before that. Like back in the Hitchcock-McClellan days, we were talking about the slow starts, and then Tippett, same thing. And like at some point, it's not on the coach anymore. Like it's happened for so long now, so I don't know what it is. It's very confusing, but it always just seems like they don't start the game with much urgency. And then you've seen it in Buffalo in the third period last night. Like they were just all over them. And if they play like that for a full 60 minutes, there's not many teams in the league that can beat them. But for whatever reason, I don't know if it's a leadership thing, not being able to get guys ready, but it just seems like this happens with this team every year, every game. And it's concerning because, again, like early in the season, it's not a big deal. But once you start getting into the time where these games really matter, and especially into the playoffs, like once you're in the playoffs, these teams, if you give them a 1 or 2 goal lead, you're not very often going to be able to come back in them. I know we've seen it a few times against the Flames, but like it's not a good recipe for success, and something that they do need to figure out right away.
Well, and I think this is one of those situations where a strength that they know they have can actually be a detriment to the team, because I think they know they can come back in any game they want to. Like they're never out of it. And they've proven it time and time again. They could be down 3-0, 4-1, 5-2, and they're not out of it. Even if there's only 10 minutes left in a game, they're not out of it, right? Like the third period against Buffalo showed that if they want to outshoot a team by 20 shots in one period, they can, right? They just absolutely have the skill and the ability to do it. But I think because, and I don't know, I'm fly on the wall or whatever in that dressing room, but I think they know that they can come back. So they're not really worried about not having a lead early. And I don't know if that's helpful. Like, yes, it's a good thing to feel confident in yourself and be able to go, okay, yeah, we're not out of this game, because that's important to know that you're down 2-0, 2-1, 3-1, and you're not out of it. But I don't think you want to play to the point where you're like, okay, well, we just got to come back now. We're good at it. We can do it. Because there are going to be games like against Buffalo where you run into a really hot goaltender and he's not going to let you back into the game, right? Eric Comrie stole that game. That's the reality of that game. Edmonton outplayed Buffalo with the exception of a little bit of a time in the second period there. But Comrie stole that game for them. Like that, no credit to Buffalo. They're a good team, better team than people think they are. But that was a goaltending performance, like beyond all whatever. And the Oilers couldn't come back in that. So they will not be able to do it in every game. So I am a little concerned, I suppose, that they might think, well, we're never out of it. We're good if we get down 2-0, 2-1. You think I'm wrong there? Like, is that something that we should be like, hey, don't get overconfident in your ability here?
Well, yeah, I mean, if that's the case, and I do think it kind of is, because like they just seem to, they know they're good enough, like you said, to come back in those games. And that's kind of one of those things where you got to just check your ego at the door, because like they're a good team, but they haven't really done anything yet league wise to really like be able to kind of have that attitude that they can come back against anyone. Like you see the top teams, Tampa Bay, Colorado, like these aren't teams that just take nights off or take periods off like this Oilers group does. And it kind of shows like what you need to do each and every night to be a winner and to build that kind of winning mentality. And what we've seen through this first 3 games isn't that at all.
Well, and there are teams that they're going to run into that know how to shut it down. Like they'll play half a hockey game one way and then the other half of the game a different style. Like they're going to be playing Carolina here on Thursday. They're going to be playing St. Louis right after that. These are 2 teams that are very good, very competitive. They know how to win. They've won before, and they can probably shut you down if they get an early lead, or at least try to. And they'll play a different style of hockey that'll frustrate you and shut down chances and limit shots from inside, things like that. So I just think they really need to focus on being able to sort of get an early lead, come out and play really hot to start in the first 10 minutes, put the other team on their heels instead of being on your heels all the time and having to fight out of the corner. That to me is the biggest concern, if there is one. Like we said, no real reason to hit the panic button yet. It's only 3 games into the season. They're 1-2. It's not like they're 0-3 and have lost by 4 goals in every game here. That's not really been the case. The defense, though, some people are a little bit worried about that. It was probably a weakness of the team going into the season. And maybe it's showing a little bit that there has been some problems. You know, certain players haven't necessarily been able to shut things down. Maybe there's a case where somebody's playing too much ice time or they're not really slotted in the right role. I don't know. What have you made so far of the defense? If you could pick like a negative and a positive, what would it be with this blue line so far?
Well, I think just overall, like coming into the season, I really doubted it. I just didn't think, like, they're missing at least like a top 4 defenseman, I think, that can really come in and play those minutes, play at both ends. And that's why I think like a trade for Chikrin or someone else out there like that who's available is that needs to happen. Maybe not right now, but before the playoffs, because I just don't see this blue line as a Stanley Cup caliber one. I don't think that I think there's a lot of players in it that are playing above what they should be right now, getting thrown more minutes. So positives, I mean, I've let you go on that, I guess. I've just been overall frustrated with kind of the defensive lapses and just, I don't know, bad time things, like even just not his fault, but you just see things like that Kulak play on Kadri's goal against Calgary and just kind of like these weird mental things that I guess you can just chalk up to kind of early season rust, but it's been frustrating so far.
Yeah, there's been a couple of disappointments. Like I was a little worried that Brett Kulak might be in over his head. And we mentioned this on the other show, where if he's playing those second line or second pairing minutes, and he's never really had to do that in the NHL before on a regular basis, that maybe that's a bit much. I feel like sometimes it isn't, but sometimes it is. Like you watch him play and it's like, man, he's played a lot tonight and maybe he's a little overwhelmed. Maybe these are too many minutes. It's maybe too early to say that for sure, but it is a concern that I'm watching. Evan Bouchard has been hit and miss for me. He's been a little questionable in his decision-making. Like the dude has a bomb of a shot. We call it the Bouch bomb, and he could, but he chooses not to. And it took him half of a game in Buffalo to be like, oh, maybe I should fire this pill. Like for whatever reason, he chose not to do it. And it's almost like he needs some time. Talk about the Oilers and their mentality. It's like Bouchard needs to feel the confidence of a few games under his belt before he's like, oh, really? I should just play my game. Right. He's been a little whatever defensively. Ryan Murray's been hit and miss for me. Sometimes he looks great and he looks like he's ready to play more minutes than anybody would have ever thought he did. And then other times he brain lapses a little bit. The big win for me, I think so far, and people might disagree after the Tage Thompson goal in Buffalo, but I think Darnell Nurse has played really well. He looks mobile. He looks fast. He looks healed. He's gotten 2 really nice goals on one-timers. He's jumping up into the rush. He's getting back on defense. The one play to break up the Alex Tuck goal in Buffalo was really good. I thought he's looked much better. Like he's looked healthier and faster and ready to play. Like he's just feeling free. Like he's not inhibited by an injury. I think that's been good. He got walked on the Tage Thompson goal, but to me, that's more a positive for Thompson than it is a negative for Nurse, because that was just a really nice goal. What are you going to do, right? Otherwise, yeah, I'm with you. I don't know if Chikrin's the answer, because we really don't know if he's ready to go. Like, how healthy is he? Can he play those minutes? Was that really one good season? And we don't know if he'll ever do that again. It's a lot to invest in somebody if he's not ready to go. But I do think they're going to need somebody. Would you said not maybe before or right away, but before the playoffs. Would you consider doing this sooner than later? Or are you like, no, we just need it for the playoffs. They'll get there. It's not really an issue, but we do need it for the postseason. Or will you try to do it as soon as you can?
So I'm more of a fan. I've never really been crazy about picking rentals up kind of right at the trade deadline sort of thing. I think it just takes guys a while to mesh with their new teammates, new city, all that. So I am always kind of a believer, and especially with what you pay for most rentals, like they're usually not cheap, whether it's prospect and or like draft picks. So I think the quicker you can bring someone in, kind of get them accustomed to the city, accustomed to their teammates, have them feeling comfortable, is better. So again, like I don't think it has to happen this week, but I would prefer it probably this year, like before 2023 and like months before the deadline kind of thing.
Let's switch gears a little bit, talk about the goaltending. What have you thought so far? We've seen Jack Campbell start, had a rough first period, but he gave them a chance to win in that game. Did really well, stopped every, basically we said like he just has to stop the next one, which he did. So the Oilers came back against Vancouver. He got run out of the game in Calgary. I don't know that I would necessarily blame him for that. That was really poor defensive play in front of him. And then we saw Stuart Skinner play the second half of that game really well, gave the Oilers a chance to come back. They couldn't quite do it. And then Skinner gets in a little bit of trouble, but I thought he played okay against Buffalo. What have you made of the goaltending so far? Any reason for concern, or is it just still kind of two players that haven't really played much with the Oilers getting used to this whole thing?
Yeah, I wouldn't say concern at this point. I've had my kind of reservations on Campbell since they signed him, but I will say, like, if you bring in a number one and kind of pay him that much, like you said, I don't think he was at fault in the Calgary game, but I think a true number one goalie, like you're kind of banking on him to weather the storm there a bit and be able to make one of those saves to kind of give your team a bit of momentum and get them going. Again, like there are a lot of number ones around the league can go through little spurts where they're not at their best. I think aside from maybe the top 3 to 5 really elite guys, you'll get that. But again, like he's being paid quite a bit. So I think you would like to see him make one of those saves, but at the same time, like things really need to tighten up in front of him. And then as far as Skinner, like I thought he was great in relief in that Calgary game. And even last night against Buffalo, I didn't think he really played a bad game by any means. He made the saves he had to, made a couple good ones. And I'm pretty confident in him as the backup this season.
Yeah, he's looked pretty solid to me. I would say for people who are worried about the goaltending, don't get ahead of yourself. The stuff that Jack Campbell let in, yeah, he's going to say that he wishes he had a couple of those back. Any goaltender is going to probably say that, especially a guy like Jack Campbell, who's known for being such an awesome teammate and never throwing anyone under the bus. He'll take the blame, even if it isn't his fault. He'll take the heat. I thought he let in a couple that maybe you might want to have back, but I wouldn't necessarily blame him for any of those. I'm not worried. I think he's going to be okay. He'll get the start against Carolina, I'm assuming. And if he has a strong game, we're going to forget all about the other stuff. Stuart Skinner's looked very calm to me. I think he looks solid. He looks poised. He looks like he belongs there. Yeah, it hasn't been perfect, but I don't know. It's hard to judge these goaltenders when the defense has been so, hit and miss, right? Like they'll play some really solid periods and shut things down, and then they'll just completely, like Jay Woodcroft said, the Oilers have not played a solid 60 minutes yet. They just haven't had a game where they played a solid game all the way through. They've always had at least one period where they've just sort of forgot to play hockey, and it's cost them. In Buffalo, it just so happened to be that they had one more goal than they could come back from, and Calgary just outplayed them for the first period. So I don't know that I would be too worried yet. One area that I am a little worried about is that Dylan Holloway hit, though. That's pretty nasty. Who do you blame on that one? Is that Warren Fogel's fault for putting that right in there where Holloway's going to get creamed? Is it Holloway's fault for not really looking up? Is it nobody's fault because there are very few defensemen that step up on forwards like that anymore in the NHL? Like who who takes the heat for that one?
Yeah, so if one player does kind of take the heat for it, it is Fogle, I think, for not really kind of understanding the situation, not really knowing the surroundings on the ice. But at the same time, like, it's a lot easier to critique when we're kind of watching from TV or even in the rink or anything. Like, the game happens so fast that it's kind of one of those plays. Like, I don't even really want to call it a suicide pass just because it, like, he chipped it off the wall to him more than anything. And obviously just a big hit. But yeah, I don't really blame either guy. I guess if you had to give one a little bit, it would be Fogle. But I think it was kind of just one of those things that happened.
I think it was a clean hit. You think it was a clean hit?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
100%.
it does. I don't think it was a legal hit by any means. It was a good hit. It was a nasty hit that you wish wasn't being made on your guy. That if your player could make it on somebody else, you'd be like, yeah, nice hit. But on your guy, it sucks. Are you a little concerned for Dylan Holloway so far? I mean, not just health wise and where he's at potentially with a concussion or whatever might have happened to him from this hit, but he had such a really good season, preseason. He had that big cough up in the first game against Vancouver. And I don't know that he's necessarily recovered or felt confident after that. Are you at all worried that he's sort of been like, man, that one pass is mentally sort of taken me out of the strong start I had in preseason? Or is it one of those things you just got to get used to it?
Well, it's kind of taken him almost like not out of the lineup, but it's given him a lot less minutes. Like after that pass, he didn't play for quite some time. And I don't even think he had 10 minutes in ice time by the time that game came to an end. So it's kind of one of those things. I think every time, like, we need to be sure to kind of temper preseason expectations. Like we learned that with, it's not even coming to me last year there, Perlini. Just, you can see guys in preseason lots of times kind of play above what they will once the regular season begins. And Holloway's still really young, still has a lot of ways to go. And like, he didn't play very much last year either with his wrist injury and everything. So it's not like he's had a ton of experience at the pro levels. So in the long term, I'm not worried about him. Right now, I'm not convinced that he's maybe the best option for a top six forward, especially. But again, it's 3 games in, so I'm not going to judge too quick here.
Yeah, I suppose we got to temper expectations, which is hard to do when you're the best player in rookie camp and then you have such a really strong preseason and there's a lot of, the high ceiling that everybody's put on you and saying, you know what, you're going to be a fantastic player. And he probably will be, but it's kind of one of those things where you don't want to put too much pressure on a kid on a very deep team. Like, this is a very strong forward group that is still waiting to break out, by the way. Like, Vander Kane's got 2 assists, but no goals. Zach Hyman's been all over the puck, but nothing's gone in for him yet in the regular season. McDavid's got 4 goals. Draisaitl's been playing pretty well, but the depth just hasn't really broken out yet. Like, we haven't seen the accent pieces around McDavid and Draisaitl just sort of explode for offense yet. And we're all waiting for that to happen. So for Dylan Holloway to have pressure on him to go, you know what, you need to play better. You need to be the guy that you were in preseason. I think that's a little unfair. Let's just hope that he's doing okay and that there's really no lingering issues from a nasty hit, because he took a big one from Labushkin there. Let's talk about the upcoming games here. Let's predict what's going to happen against Carolina and St. Louis. Before we do that, let's just say that this segment is brought to you by sportsidehustle.com. If you want to get off the sidelines and into the game and learn how to take your passion for sports and turn it into a lucrative second income, go to sportsidehustle.com. You can get a free download. The 4 keys to unlocking your fan potential and ability to earn some revenue as a sports fan. That's sportsidehustle.com. Okay, so let's pick the winners against Carolina and St. Louis, because the upcoming games here, October 22nd against St. Louis, it's an afternoon game on a Saturday. And then the Penguins on October 4th, but Carolina happens right away here. So on Thursday, as people watch, it's going to be happening tonight. So we got 3 games to predict. What's going to happen here with Carolina? Let's start there.
Well, I'm hoping what's going to happen is that they can really build off that excellent third period they had yesterday against Buffalo and kind of build off that and just be able to play with them and play a full 60. I think Carolina's such a good team. Like, a lot of people have them pegged as the Stanley Cup winners this year. So if they start off slow like they have, like we've seen from them so far through the first 3 games, then they're going to be in trouble. That's not a team that you want to chase. But having said that, I do think that it's kind of like a wake up time for this group right now after what happened against Buffalo and Vancouver as well. So overall, I'm not too worried. I do think that they'll put together a better effort tomorrow, and I think they can come out on top.
I'm with you on what you said with the third period there. If the Oilers can take the momentum that they had from the Buffalo third period and bring it into the game against Carolina, I think they'll be in good shape. If they start rough, like they've started these other 3 games, although the start against Buffalo wasn't terrible. Like they did outplay Buffalo in the first period, but if they have the same third period like mentality and they go, man, we destroyed Buffalo in that third period. We just couldn't beat that goaltender, but we will beat whoever we play next. I think they'll be all right. I'm going to predict the score. I'm going to say 4-3, the Oilers. First overtime game, though, of the season. I think the Oilers and Carolina are going to go overtime, and I think the Oilers take it. Do you have a score?
I'll say 4-1 Oilers. I'll say Campbell gets the start and plays his best game in an Oilers jersey so far.
Nice. Okay, so let's move on to St. Louis. That one happens on October 22nd. It's an afternoon game on a Saturday. So far, no back-to-backs. They're still at home. I think the Oilers really need to turn this homestand around and kind of take advantage of the fact that they have a very friendly schedule. I like the idea that St. Louis is coming in here in the afternoon. I think it favors the Oilers. I'm going to say 3-1 Edmonton, believing that I think it's possible they lose that game against Carolina, and then it becomes kind of even though it's super early and it must win is not a fair comment to make, but maybe they see it like, man, this is kind of a must win for us. Like we really got to get this homestand. We cannot start this crappy, having such an advantage of the schedule. So I'm going to say 3-1 Edmonton against St. Louis. Where are you going?
Well, yeah, like you said, I think if they do drop that one to Carolina, then it, again, like must win. It's 5 games in by then, but it is like starting to get a little worrisome at that point. So I gave them the win against Carolina. I'll do the same thing against St. Louis, and I'll say that one for the overtime. I'll say 3-2 Oilers win in overtime.
Okay, and our final game, and I'm doing these 3 games because I assume that we'll have some stuff to talk about when we do our next episode. So that is Monday, October 24th at 6 p.m. Penguins in town. Again, Oilers at home. Got to take advantage of it. I don't want to say the Oilers are going to win 3 in a row, even though I think it's super possible that they do that. So I'm going with Pittsburgh on this one. I'll say it's close, though. Probably like 3-2 empty netter. Pittsburgh goes 4-2. But I'm assuming that the Oilers have really good performances against Carolina and St. Louis. If they don't, it changes my entire perspective on the Pittsburgh game. But I'm going to call Pittsburgh on this one just because I thought Carolina and St. Louis were going to be wins for the Oilers. So I'll go 4-2 Pittsburgh. Let's hope it's Edmonton, just to be fair. What do you think?
I feel like I'm just copying you at this point, but I just think looking back in the past, like you see the Crosby-McDavid matchups, and to this point, like Crosby has the clear upper hand in those. So it's tough for me to pick against the Penguins too. I think it'll be a bit more of a shootout in that one. I think just whenever those two get together, it's always really exciting hockey. At least that's what I'm hoping for. So I will take the Penguins as well. I'll say a 5-4 win for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I can remember a game where it was McDavid and Crosby, and I don't remember when this was or how many seasons it was, but the Oilers were really outplaying the Penguins, and Crosby just decided to start showing up in the third. He had that one goal where he just walked around everybody, skated all over the place, and then tucked it. I mean, that was it, right? Game over, right? So he has the ability, like McDavid, to just change the outcome of a game. And I like Pittsburgh's, what they've done with their season. They're a team that I think has been underrated, underappreciated going into this. I think they're overlooked. So I believe they're going to be a tougher challenge than people think they are. So we'll see. Hopefully the Oilers, if we're right, go at least 2-1, get their season back to even. And we're talking about a 500 record or better by the time that we do this show next week. Colton, thank you very much. I appreciate it. For everybody else, this has been another edition of THW Oilers Overtime, brought to you by the Hockey Writers. Don't forget, you can download, subscribe, hit the like button on YouTube, check out the other episodes. There's a bunch of great content from the Hockey Writers contributors here, not just our show. Check them all out. They're all back in full swing again because the season's going. But until next time, we'll talk to you on another Oilers Overtime. Take care, everybody.